Welcome to Move the Chains with Jonathan Rivers. Here's your host, Jonathan Rivers.
Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On the MTC call sheet today, I'm going to talk about the state of the Dallas Cowboys. And it's a state that a lot of people don't want to talk about because it's not what they think it is. And for a lot of you guys, it's not what you want it to be. All right, I'm also going to go into social media questions in second down, making sure that I can answer what you think about the NFL and what I've seen via social media. And in my favorite segment, the nonsense narrative, there's this next man up mentality that exists in sports. And I think it's a mentality that should exist. However, in a lot of cases, it's not what you think it is, because the next man up doesn't mean that it's going to be the same as the best man up. All right, and last but not least, there's a puzzle going on in Pittsburgh that a lot of people are wondering why it hasn't been solved yet. And I'm going to tell you why I think it has been. All that and more here on Move the Chains. But you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with first down. All right, so the Dallas Cowboys are a team that's very polarizing for a lot of different reasons. I've told you before on this very show that I think the Cowboys are America's brand and not America's team. The Cowboys are also polarizing to the country and to the world because a lot of people think that they're not very good and they just hate on the Cowboys at any opportunity that they have to hate on the Cowboys. You've heard people say, like, whatever will go wrong with the Cowboys will go wrong. It's kind of like Murphy's Law. But then there are a lot of people with the Cowboys that are delusional because they look at their team and think they're Super Bowl contenders every year. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because I think no matter how people feel about the Cowboys, which I think is on the ends of both spectrums, you either really love the Cowboys or you really hate the Cowboys, I think a lot of people lack the ability to truly be objective and see the Cowboys for what they are every single year. For example, last year, coming off of 3 consecutive 12-win seasons on this show, probably in April or May of last year, I said before the season as a bold prediction that the Cowboys would not make the playoffs. And I happened to be dead on. Now, I didn't know Dak Prescott was going to get hurt. I didn't realize that Trayvon Diggs would sustain injuries. So those are 2 of your best players whom they didn't have. Now, that's a reason that came to fruition, but I also thought that it was simply a law of averages and their division was going to be better, which it was. Didn't know what Washington was going to be, but the NFC was top to bottom deep as well. But now I'm looking at this year, and I'm telling you guys, I think the Cowboys are going to look more like they looked in those 3 consecutive 12-win seasons than they looked last year, struggling and looking like one of the worst teams, not only in the NFC, but in the NFL. And a lot of people say, well, why do you think the Cowboys will be better? They're closer to a rebuild than they are a championship. And I just want to show you this graphic of offseason moves they made thus far. Now, if you don't know who Clayton Adams is, don't feel bad because I didn't know who he was until a few weeks ago as I was researching the Cowboys to have this discussion. Clayton Adams is a new offensive coordinator under head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because Clayton Adams is the former offensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals. That in itself may not mean much. He had to have a job in the NFL likely before he became the offensive coordinator. But you hired an offensive line coach to be your offensive coordinator, and then you went out and got Javonte Williams, a free agent running back from the Broncos. You went out and drafted Tyler Booker from Alabama in the first round, an offensive lineman. You went out and drafted Jaden Blue from Texas in the 5th round. And you went out and got Miles Sanders, former Eagle and Carolina Panthers, in free agency as well. Everybody's going to talk about the George Pickens trade at wide receiver. I get it. But what I want you to understand is that as we come back here, the Dallas Cowboys are trying to tell you what their identity was because they're trying to remind everybody of what they weren't last year. This was a team that was very bad running the football. And now remember what everybody said. Everybody got mad at Dallas because they didn't sign Derrick Henry. I definitely think they should have been in the run for signing Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry is one of the best football players, not just one of the best running backs. Plus, he brings an attitude and an opportunity for your team to become a contender immediately, whether you have a phenomenal offensive line or not. And remember, the Dallas Cowboys have drafted 3 first-round offensive linemen that are currently on their starting roster. So the Cowboys have done a very good job in the draft, and they've done a very good job in free agency. So the George Pickens deal and trade, I think, kind of solidifies what they want to be. They're going to be a team who has a quarterback who's coming off of injury, and they're going to try to run the football and go and play action. And they have George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Now, the whole thing about George Pickens with the Dallas Cowboys, is he a good fit? Athletically, scheme-wise, I would say absolutely he's a baller. But the Dallas Cowboys have had an issue when it comes to personalities, when it comes to culture. Now, remember, that was under Mike McCarthy. And I'm going to continue to say this about Brian Schottenheimer. I don't have any idea of the type of coach he'll be when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. He's never been a head coach. We don't know. But what I know is if this were any other team who hired a head coach from within the organization who was on staff, who had a father that was a very successful head coach and has been around football in the NFL for over 2 decades, you would consider that a very good hire. But because it's the Dallas Cowboys and it wasn't a splash hire, a lot of people are dissing Brian Schottenheimer and making fun of the Cowboys. And see, this is what I really don't understand. Again, I'm not a Cowboy supporter. I'm not a Cowboy hater. I'm an NFL realist in my estimation. I'm as objective as they come, which is my goal. And I say this again, people can't look at the Cowboys through a lens other than love or hate. The Cowboys, I think, are an organization that have put themselves in position to compete this year. And a lot of people get mad at the Cowboys when they make splash hires because they say this is why the Cowboys are who they are. They don't care about football. They only care about the splash hires. But then when you ask them have they had a good offseason, you say, well, it's been kind of quiet. That's not the Cowboy way. So how can you not like the Cowboys for making quote-unquote splash hires and making a lot of noise and then still not like them when they're making off-season moves that seem to be building in the right direction of a playoff team? So to me, that's an individual issue on their part. So to sum all of it up, let me go ahead and say this about the Dallas Cowboys. They drafted an O-lineman in the first round. They went and added 3 running backs to their roster. In a league where I've told you before the running back position isn't dead, they went and added 3. So remember, it's not about a running back being productive. It's about getting production from the running back position. Now you have basically 2 number ones for Dak Prescott, right? You've got an opportunity to have a defense that can be good, especially with Mike Zimmer coming in who likes to run a lot of zone and likes to run a lot of 4-man fronts. And if you saw on the graphic that I showed you, you saw the acquisitions of guys like Solomon Thomas up front to make sure that they can solidify what they like to do because Mike Zimmer doesn't like to blitz a lot. I'm sorry, Matt Eberflus, former coach of the Chicago Bears, is the new defensive coordinator for Dallas Cowboys. Eberflus doesn't like to blitz a lot. He likes to run a lot of zone. So they're building what they've built around their coaching staff, and I think that matters. It seems that they're putting things in place in the right way. Now, will it come to fruition? Will Dallas be a good team this year? I don't know. But what I'm telling you is the fact that they haven't made a lot of splashy moves isn't what made this a good offseason for them. The fact that they're building according to a plan that they seem to have is, in my mind, what makes this a good offseason. All right, when we come back from the break, I'll be answering social media questions right here. Back when we move the chains, right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. Before I get into second down and answering social media questions, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for this opportunity to host Move the Chains. It's truly a blessing. Secondly, I also want to take time to thank you, the fans, whether you're via TikTok, social media platform, Instagram, YouTube, on here, WXTX, Fox 4, anywhere in the streets of the Columbus, Georgia area. I really appreciate you taking the time to validate and talk about how much you love the show. And last but not least, the best production crew, YouTube crew, TikTok crew in the business. They make sure the show happens. They make sure that the videos are posted, that we're getting the content out everywhere that it should be. And the show is continuously growing, and we've still got big things coming. So shout out to the best production crew and social media team in the business. Having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for second down. All right, so again, I scour social media, and again, these are social media questions, but there's also questions that get asked to me personally when somebody sees me out in the street. So I want to make sure that I take an opportunity to answer these questions. And the first question we have for today is, what division will be the most intriguing in 2025? I've said this before, but I want to hit it from another angle. I truly believe that the AFC West will be the most intriguing division in football. Now, I think it also might be the best division in football. The NFC East will be better than a lot of people think because they're run by young quarterbacks other than the Giants. The NFC East is a beast. The NFC North was last year, but the AFC West is intriguing really for this reason. Because I've heard a lot of people say that the Chiefs shouldn't be the favorite to win the AFC West this year. Now, I think the Chiefs with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes will always be the favorite, and especially with Steve Spagnuolo on the defense. But let's say you're right, and I won't even argue because I think it's a bad take. I think somebody telling me that the Chiefs will not be the best team in the AFC West is an okay take. It's a good take. It's a take that can be substantiated with evidence. So I have no problem with that. But then I'll ask you this question. What does it matter if they win the West? The question is, will the Chiefs make the playoffs? And are you telling me that the Chiefs won't be one of the best 7 teams in AFC? Of course they will be. So we've seen the Chiefs go on the road and win playoff games. So having to go on the road, to me, is a non-issue. So I don't think the question is whether the Chiefs win the AFC West. I think it's whether the Chargers, the Raiders, and or the Broncos can win the West and keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs along with the rest of the AFC. That's what's most intriguing for me in 2025. Because to me, a division title not being won will break their streak of 8 or 9 straight division titles, but it won't break their streak of the opportunity to go to a consecutive AFC championship game for like the 7th or 8th year. All right. Let's hit back right here. Next question. Can the Giants make the playoffs in 2025? Man, I've really been teetering on this question. I'm going to say no for now, but I do think the Giants will have one of the best plus-minus turnarounds, or in terms of win total turnarounds, from 2024 to 2025. Because defensively, this is not a bad football team. This is why football is a complementary game, because you can be good on one side of the ball, but terrible in the other two phases, and it really sink you. But I think what they did with their quarterback room, I'm going to say this again, I think they did a good job. I don't think that Jackson Dart was the pick that I would have taken in the first round, trading back into the first round. But I love the fact that they traded back into the first round to get a young quarterback to let him sit behind veterans like Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. And listen, you may look at Russell Wilson's first year with Denver and say, hey, he was trash. The Broncos didn't make the playoffs. They weren't good. Nathaniel Hackett was the coach. That defense was one of the worst defenses in NFL history, so that team was bad. But Russell Wilson has been consistently a playoff quarterback. This team, with guys like Tracy at the running back position, they've got Malik Neighbors, who is a star. They've got Darius Slayton, who is an underrated receiver. Their offensive line does need work. But this is a team I think will be competitive in one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL. So no, I don't think the Giants will make the playoffs, but I think they will look a whole lot different in 2025 than they did in 2024. All right, that's the last question I have. Who is the Super Bowl favorite after the Chiefs and the Eagles? So those are my betting favorites, the Chiefs and the Eagles. They're not going anywhere. They're the two best teams in football, in my estimation, because they're the two best organizations. But I think Buffalo would be next. And I would have loved to have said Baltimore right here. And I'm not just saying Buffalo because Buffalo beat Baltimore in the division round last year, although that had something to do with it. The way Buffalo is building their team, the infrastructure that's being set, the way that they're going out and getting guys like Joey Bosa, when Von Miller, they had him and he couldn't help get the job done in terms of their pass rush. The Buffalo Bills are building an infrastructure of understanding that they have a Superman-type quarterback that they don't want to have to become Superman every single time. They're using a blueprint that the Chiefs have used, that the Patriots of old have used, right? They're using rotating door receivers. They drafted Keon Coleman in the second round last year, who's been a very big help for them. They've got Shakir at slot, who's going to be a very big help for them. So all I'm saying is Buffalo is a team that may not be flashy, but with their offensive line and James Cook and that guy Josh Allen at quarterback, they're going to be a team that are on the cusp of knocking on that Super Bowl door. Just give them time. All right, when we come back from the break, I want to make sure that you understand that it's going to be my favorite segment of the show. It'll be time for the nonsense narrative. Back when we move the chains right after this. And we'll go back into Move the Chains. So I've given you the state of the Cowboys thus far and also answered social media questions specifically about the NFC West, about the Giants, and about the team that I think is the third favorite to win the Super Bowl, my estimation, behind the Chiefs and the Eagles, being the Buffalo Bills. So at this point in time, I'm going to get to my favorite segment of the show. It's time for the nonsense narrative. All right, next man up mentality. It's something in sports that needs to exist because it's true. Like when somebody gets hurt, there are no excuses. But see, that's where I want to go with the next mentality because I think it's not the saying, it's the meaning and the interpretation that's nonsense. Because if you're a team and your starting quarterback gets hurt, specifically in the NFL, because I'm going to talk about the dichotomy between the NFL and college football regarding this mentality. If you get hurt as an NFL quarterback, the majority of NFL teams don't have an option to help you win a playoff game or win a Super Bowl if you're the backup. On very rare occasions do you say a backup quarterback in the NFL make hay, and not just at the quarterback position, but your offensive lineman. Look at the Detroit Lions last year and the defensive injuries that they sustained. They weren't the same. So when I'm talking about guys like Tua Tagovailoa, Christian McCaffrey, guys that run these teams, whether you're a quarterback or one of your best players and running backs in the NFL, it matters. So when people say next man up, it's the mentality because you can't sit there and say, well, we lost this guy, we can't go out there and try. We can't go out there and compete. No, you got to go out there and compete because the game waits for nobody. You being injured doesn't stop you from having to play that next Thursday or the next Sunday or the next Monday in the NFL. You being injured doesn't stop you from having to go through a stretch when you got to play 3 division games in a row and you could be at the top of your division in week 4 and the bottom of your division week 8. That doesn't stop. But what next man mentality also doesn't do, next man up mentality, is it doesn't replace the greatness at the position that you have. Remember, I think in college, the gap between a backup and a starter may not be that big in a lot of different cases because you can recruit 4 and 5 stars at the same position because you have more roster spots. You have more scholarship opportunities, and plus, technically, you're not hampered by a salary cap. But in the NFL, you can't do that. You saw with the Chiefs, when they struggled at left tackle, they had to move Joe Tooney to left tackle, which means they compromised the interior of their line. In the NFL, it's just different. So the next man up mentality does mean something because you can't quit. But I'm telling you, you can't have a situation where you say next man up and expect the same production. If you were getting the same production from the backup likely wouldn't be the backup. So I'm all about the mentality of next man up because you've got to make hay, and there are no excuses, only adjustments. But let's not act like your production's not going to dip because the player was ahead of you for a reason. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be the final segment of the show, which means it'll be the final drive. Back with the last part of Move the Chains right after this. To the show, and it's time for the final segment of Move the Chains, which means it's time for the final drive. So look, I truly believe that there's a quarterback puzzle in Pittsburgh right now. But see, to me, the puzzle is people thinking that the puzzle isn't already solved. They might still want Aaron Rodgers. They might still want an opportunity to bring him in to be their starter for a year or two. But why are we so novice in thinking that he doesn't want Mason Rudolph being his starter, even though Mason Rudolph has led him to the playoffs before? Plus, they have a litany of draft picks in 2026 that if the season doesn't go well for Pittsburgh in 2025, they can always package those draft picks and try to go get a quarterback in the early rounds of the draft. So I'm going to take Mike Tomlin at his word, and I may be a fool for it, but the puzzle to me isn't that they don't yet have a quarterback. The puzzle is, why does everybody think that they don't have the situation that they want, not understanding who this coach is and what they've done in the past regarding that position and still making the playoffs. All right, don't forget you can catch Move the Chains not just on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you go to youtube.com/@move_the_chain. Subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comment. We're here for it. Hey, another banger for the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And until next time, right here on Move the Chains, God bless.